Hello, this video is a presentation about concepts of operations, also known as ConOps. We're going to provide an overview, what are ConOps, how they are used, what they're used for, best practices, and also a few examples how they are used in NSF Major Facilities. My name is Rafael Ferreira da Silva, and I'm part of the CI/CoE pilot project. ConOps is widely used in several companies as a first document for defining what are the expectations of the user, how they're going to use the systems, and it also explains what are the organization, the mission objectives of the systems, and especially try to provide quantitative and qualitative characteristics to stakeholders. So one very well-known standard defined for it, how to write a very good ConOps is the IEEE standard, the 1362 from 1998. In that standard, it also describes that a ConOps document also should describe the proposed system in terms of user needs it will fulfill, its relationship to existing systems or procedures, and the ways it will be used. In particular, recall that this ConOps document is tailored for user needs. So you should really provide high-level definitions of how the system is going to behave and what are the interactions with the system in the user perspective. Also, a ConOps document can be tailored for many purposes. For example, it's very well known for using to obtain consensus among the acquired developer supporters and user agencies on the operational concept of the proposed system. It's important here to say it's when we talk about stakeholders is the key word here. So you need to very well define who are the stakeholders of your ConOps document. Are you only targeting the end user? Are you targeting also the stakeholders? For example, in this case, could be NSF, defendant agencies. We could also target the developers and also groups that you are interacting or collaborating with. So depending on the stakeholders you are trying to achieve with this ConOps document, you might use it to obtain different consensus that all the parts agree on how the system should behave and what should be expected. So what are the ConOps objectives? The MITRE organization provides a very good document summarizing some of this information. So here we highlight some of them. For example, one of the objectives for the ConOps document would be to provide end-to-end traceability between operational needs and captured source requirements. Also to establish a high-level basis for requirements that supports the systems over its life cycle. Establish a high-level basis for test, planning, and system-level test requirements. Support the generation of operational analysis models use case to test the interfaces. Provide the basis for computations of system capacity and validate and discover implicit requirements. So what are the steps to develop a ConOps document? So the ConOps document should be the first step in engineering lifecycle. Before you develop any code or go into the details of specific use cases, system implementation specifics, you should first start with a ConOps document. And we need to pay attention that every ConOps document is a living document. So it's a unique document requiring input from all stakeholders. So that's why the stakeholders here is again the key word. You need to think about who are your stakeholders and provide information and get input from all of them to keep with this document alive and update as the project goes. A good ConOps document should answer the following basic questions: who, what, why, where, when, and how. Who are the stakeholders involved in the system? What are the known elements and high-level capabilities of the system? Why does the organization lack that the system will provide to you? Where is the system located geographically and physically? When each activity will be performed, so for example, if you use like a time sequence diagram, and how will the system be designed and built, with what resources? So basically, if you can answer very well these 6 questions, you can assume that you have a very good ConOps document. After reviewing several documents and the IEEE standard, we come up with this suggested structure for a ConOps document, which includes a cover page, that you provide the information about this is a ConOps document, and then probably your institution's headers and a few more information there. The record of reviews and changes. So the record here, it's the idea is you keep a track record of changes to the document, who changed the document, when the document was changed, the table of contents, the actual contents of the document that will be detailed in the next slides, some notes, references, appendices, and what is very important here, and most of the people don't provide, it's a glossary and acronyms. So the glossary is quite helpful because especially when you have different stakeholders and people tend to talk with different languages or jargons. So the glossary is the place that you can put all this information that would help communication between different types of stakeholders or different teams. So going to the details of what a ConOps contents should have, the first thing we say it's the executive summary. So this is the first section of your ConOps document that should provide a summary of the purpose, or what is the scope of the document, provides an overall description of the system. So this is a high-level description of the system. A figure might help here. Includes guidance to the preparation and approval process of the ConOps. So basically you're telling what is the process to approve change to this ConOps, who should be involved, and when you take decisions to have a new revision. And also you need to provide sufficient information for the executive decision maker to understand the contents of the ConOps. At this point, anyone reading the ConOps, when they finish the executive summary, they should know what this document is about and what kind of information they're going to find there. And then you provide a little bit more information about your organization, institution. So what are the mission statement, what are the definitions, so who you are and different entities, goals and objectives, and capabilities required, for example, by NSF and its stakeholders, partners to accomplish the mission. Then you provide the operational organization that you define your roles, responsibilities. For example, have some organization charts. It helps to understand how things are structured and organized. And you get more starting into the details of the system. So what is the current systems that you have? Not everybody has already a system, so this is more applied for the situation that you have a system and you try to evolve to another system, or you are integrating your system with another system, and so it's going to move to a new architecture, a new integrated system. So you're going to spend like one section explaining what is the current system, provide a brief description of the operational situation, what are the gaps, constraints in relation to this context that you have, and provide a good justification of changes, why you need the changes, what are the limitations. And then you enter the section of what you're proposing now, what is the new system. You provide a general description of the system and its components. The next step are the operations and support description. So basically this is the longest part of your ConOps and where you're going to go into the details of the system. So for each operational scenario, you're going to provide the users and other stakeholders needed for this operational scenario. What are the policies, assumptions, and constraints? The operating concept. So it's not an upcom document, but it's a little bit more detailed information on how the specifics of this system is going to work to support this operational scenario, and what are the potential impacts of this operational scenario. So basically you wanted to identify any relevant operational scenario, or some people would say some kind of use case too, that would be relevant for all the stakeholders that would be reading this ConOps document. Now we're going to analyze some examples of ConOps documents applied to NSF Major Facilities. So this one, it's one developed by the OY and is directed to the CI, Sub-Infrastructure Science user. So note that here the stakeholder is very specific. It's a user, then user, there is a CI scientist. So you're not talking about developers, you're not talking about NSF, but it's just one kind of user. So it is expected that these ConOps will be a little bit more high level with information explaining how to use the system by the perspective of that user, how to interact with the system, get some data from the system, and so on. So basically this ConOps follows the IEEE standard with some degree of freedom. So what I say here is the degree of freedom is they're not following strict structure of the IEEE standard, but it's the sections are classified in the same way. So what it's good about this ConOps, it has a clear structure of the mission and organizational roles. They give all this information in their introduction. It's written in a layman's terms, so non-technical as possible. So facilitates a lot the decision makers' understanding. Some issues here are like operational scenarios are blended with operating concepts. So it's not that easy to separate the parts of like what are the stakeholder, the user needs from the implementation details. And as I said, the stakeholders are not clearly defined for each operational scenario. So you can find this ConOps public available in the URL available on this slide. As I mentioned before, the ConOps starts with a document control page that has a list of changes to the document and a list of its contributors. This is very important step in a ConOps because you keep track of all the changes and how things evolved. And recall, this is a living document. So keeping track of how things changed, who took decisions, who contributed to the new document is essential here. So the introduction, they summarize the purpose of the document, they provide their goals and objectives, and there are sections organized into 4 major themes of operation of the OY system, again as the perspective of the CI science user. Something to highlight in their introduction that it's quite interesting is they created these small sections, say the specific goals of the ConOps. These ConOps actually include, and they list a few of them. So in the beginning, it's clear what are the expectations the users will have coming and reading these ConOps. So what their kind of information they're gonna find and how things are being answered for them. As I mentioned in the previous slide, they divide these ConOps into 4 different operational scenarios. So this is just an example of one of them, that it's completely easy to follow, non-technical as possible, and provide diagrams that are quite straightforward to explain what are the flow of the operational scenario. However, they do not provide this operating concept, the assumptions and constraints behind, and the potential impacts, which it's fine here because again, they are targeting the science users is one specific kind of user, but in your ConOps, if you are going more into combining different stakeholders, you might want it to go a little bit more detailed. Another example is the LSST ConOps that follows more the Department of Homeland Security style for ConOps, but it's also based on the IEEE standard, but they have a slightly different structure. So they really focus on defining the operational scenarios and detailed operational concepts. However, it's hard to separate, what is the fine line between the ConOps and an OpsCon in this document. So this is a very long document, descriptive document that provides very good information on like who are the stakeholders, what are the needs, what is the overview of the system or of each operational scenario. But it's a little bit hard to tell, is this a ConOps or is this an OpsCon or are both combined? Well, I hope you enjoyed this brief presentation on ConOps. That is just an introduction overview. If you have questions, please feel free to contact me or come to our website, cicoe-pilot.org, that you can find this material and much more materials and information and documents there. And also other ways to get engaged with us and understanding what are our working groups, what are we doing, what kind of engagements we provide. And please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you.